My name is Theresa, and I'm 58 years old. For over 30 years, I've cleaned other people's homes to put food on our table and give my son James opportunities I never had. I scrubbed floors so he could attend good schools, polished silver so he could have piano lessons, and dusted mansions so he could go to college. But when his wedding invitation never came, he told me, "You're just a cleaning lady. It would be embarrassing to have you there." Before I tell you what happened on my son's wedding day, let me know where you're watching from. Drop a like if you've ever been underestimated because of your profession, and subscribe for more stories about family sacrifice and standing up for yourself. I grew up in Millfield, a small town in Ohio, where most people worked at the paper mill or commuted to Columbus for better opportunities. My father left when I was 6, and my mother worked as a waitress at the local diner, often taking double shifts to keep a roof over our heads. School was my escape, my chance to dream of something different, but those dreams crumbled when Mom got sick with lupus when I was 17. "Theresa, honey," Mom said from her hospital bed, "you might need to put college on hold for a bit, just until I'm back on my feet." That bit turned into forever. I dropped out 3 months before graduation to care for her and pick up waitressing shifts at the same diner. The manager Stan hired me out of pity, and because Mom had been his most reliable employee for 15 years. "You got your mother's work ethic," he told me during my first week. "That'll take you far, even without that diploma." I tried to believe him, but opportunities were scarce for high school dropouts in our town. When I met David at the diner 6 months later, he seemed like my ticket to a better life. He was 24, handsome, with an easy smile and big plans. He worked construction and talked about starting his own company someday. "You're too smart to be stuck in this place forever," he told me during our third date. "We could build something great together." We married 4 months later, when I was just 19. Mom managed to attend the small ceremony at the local church, though she needed a wheelchair by then. Her health deteriorated rapidly after our wedding, and she passed away 3 months later. The grief was overwhelming, but David became my rock, promising we'd build the family I'd lost. I got pregnant with James just before my 20th birthday. During those early months of pregnancy, hairline cracks in David's charming facade began to appear. He'd come home smelling of alcohol more frequently. Money for bills would mysteriously disappear. His temper flared over small inconveniences. "It's just stress about becoming a father," I told myself, making excuses I desperately wanted to believe. James was born on a snowy January morning. The moment I held him, a fierce protectiveness washed over me. I knew then I would do anything to give this child the stability and opportunities I never had. But David's drinking worsened after James was born. The promised construction company never materialized as he bounced between jobs, often getting fired for showing up late or intoxicated. I returned to waitressing when James was 6 weeks old, leaving him with a neighbor who watched several children for a few dollars an hour. David's verbal abuse escalated alongside his drinking. Nothing I did was ever enough. Dinner was always too cold or too bland. The apartment was never clean enough. James cried too much. I worked too much, or not enough. "You're nothing without me" became his favorite refrain when I threatened to leave. "Who's gonna want to drop out with a baby? You're lucky I stay." For 4 years I believed him. I worked double shifts while managing a colicky baby and an increasingly volatile husband. Some nights I'd lock myself and James in the bathroom when David came home in one of his rages. I'd sing softly to my son, promising him that someday things would be better. That someday came unexpectedly when James was 4. I returned from an early morning shift to find David gone along with our old TV, the microwave, and the little cash I'd hidden for emergencies. His scrawled note simply read, "Can't do this anymore. Don't try to find me." The initial panic gave way to an unexpected sense of relief. We were on our own, but at least the walking hurricane that was David had moved on. The peace in our tiny apartment was worth more than any financial support he might have provided, which had become increasingly sporadic anyway. With David gone, I needed more flexible work to care for James. A regular at the diner mentioned that her sister needed a housekeeper one day a week. The pay was better than waitressing, and I could bring James along since he was well behaved. I've never done professional cleaning, I admitted during the interview with Mrs. Blackwell, an elegant woman in her 60s. Do you clean your own home? She asked. Of course. Then you know how to clean. The rest is just learning what products work best on different surfaces. I can teach you that. Mrs. Blackwell became my first regular client and my unexpected mentor. She recommended me to her friends, and soon I was cleaning for several wealthy families in the nicer part of town. I created business cards that read, Theresa's Thorough Cleaning Services, and established a reputation for reliability and discretion. The work was hard, but gratifying in its immediate results. A chaotic space transformed into order. Grime and dust banished by my hands, surfaces gleaming as I left. There was dignity in doing a job well, in being trusted with people's private spaces and possessions. Most importantly, cleaning homes offered the flexibility I needed as a single mother. I could schedule work while James was in school, be home when he was sick, and attend his school events without begging managers for time off. The pay was decent, especially with the generous tips around holidays. I rented a small 2-bedroom apartment in a safer neighborhood with better schools. It stretched our budget to the breaking point, but James's education was my priority. He was bright, curious, and deserved every opportunity I could provide. Why do you clean other people's houses? Mum, 8-year-old James asked one day after a classmate had made a comment. Because I'm good at it, I told him honestly, and because it lets me be there for you while earning enough for us to have this nice home and food on our table. Do you wish you did something else? I paused before answering. Sometimes I wish I'd finished school and had more choices. That's why your education is so important, sweetie. I want you to have all the opportunities I missed. From that moment on, James seemed to understand the sacrifices I was making. He worked hard in school, earning straight A's and praise from his teachers. I scrimped and saved to pay for extracurricular activities I knew would help his college applications. Piano lessons from a music student at the local community college. Summer science camps on scholarship. Second-hand sports equipment so he could join the soccer team. No matter how tired I was from scrubbing floors and cleaning bathrooms, I attended every school concert, every parent-teacher conference, every soccer game. Sometimes I'd arrive still in my cleaning clothes, having rushed directly from a client's home, but I was always there, cheering him on. Those years were exhausting, but purposeful. Every aching muscle and calloused hand served a greater goal, giving James the future I never had. And watching him flourish made every sacrifice worthwhile. James excelled throughout school consistently at the top of his class. His teachers often told me at conferences that he had exceptional potential. With his academic record and extracurriculars, he should aim for top universities. His high school counselor advised during his junior year. Has he considered the Ivy League? The suggestion both thrilled and terrified me. Those schools represented opportunities beyond my wildest dreams, but the price tag seemed impossible on my housekeeper's income. When James was accepted to Cornell University with a substantial merit scholarship, I cried for hours. The scholarship would cover tuition, but there were still room and board books and living expenses to consider. I took on additional cleaning jobs, working 6 and sometimes 7 days a week to make up the difference. Mom, you're going to work yourself to death, James worried as I rushed between houses. I'm fine, I assured him, hiding my exhaustion. This is temporary. Your education is worth it. The day I dropped him off at Cornell was bittersweet. As we unloaded his few belongings in the dormitory, I noticed the difference between our modest packages and the expensive luggage and electronics other students were unpacking. James noticed too, his eyes darting nervously between his new classmates and me. Mom, he whispered, as his roommate's family momentarily left the room. Maybe don't mention that you clean houses when you meet people. Just say you're in household management or something. The request stung, but I understood. He was 18, starting fresh in a new environment, sensitive about fitting in. Of course, honey, whatever makes you comfortable. That first parent weekend, I wore my nicest outfit and practiced saying I manage residential properties in the mirror before attending events. James introduced me to his friends with a quick, "This is my mum, Theresa," offering no details about my occupation. I played along, focusing conversations on him and his studies rather than myself. As semesters passed, these small moments of discomfort multiplied. James came home less frequently for breaks. Our phone calls grew shorter, often interrupted by social engagements he needed to attend. When I mentioned my regular clients or work anecdotes, he would quickly change the subject. During his junior year, James secured a prestigious summer internship at Goldman Sachs. He returned transformed, wearing clothes I hadn't purchased, and speaking about investments and networking with casual expertise. That same summer, he met Amelia, whose father was a partner at another financial firm. "She's from Greenwich, Connecticut," he told me, as though the location itself conveyed important information. "Her family has connections everywhere in finance." The first time James brought Amelia to our apartment, her discomfort was palpable. She smiled politely but declined food, her eyes scanning our modest furnishings with barely concealed judgment. "Your home is so cozy," she said, managing to make the words sound like a criticism. "James grew up happy here," I responded, a gentle reminder of what mattered. "Of course," she said, not meeting my eyes. "James has accomplished so much coming from such humble beginnings." After they left, I cried for the first time since James had gone to college. The distance growing between us wasn't just physical anymore. Following graduation, James accepted a position at a financial firm in Manhattan. His starting salary was more than I had ever earned in a year. He moved into an apartment in a trendy neighborhood, sending me occasional photos of views and furnishings that looked like they belonged in the homes I cleaned. Our weekly calls dwindled to monthly, then to special occasions only. When he did call, he spoke animatedly about networking events, exotic vacation destinations with Amelia, and career advancements. He rarely asked about my life, and when I shared stories about my regular clients or neighborhood happenings, he would listen briefly before finding reasons to end the call. I still sent care packages with homemade cookies and practical items for his apartment. I maintained his childhood bedroom exactly as he'd left it, hoping he might visit more frequently. But as months stretched into years, his visits became rare events that required weeks of advanced planning. The announcement of his engagement came 3 years after graduation, via a brief phone call on a Tuesday evening. "Mom, I wanted you to know before it hit social media. Amelia and I are engaged." "Oh, James, congratulations. When did this happen?" "Last weekend. I proposed at her family's summer house in the Hamptons. Her parents hosted a small celebration after." The fact that I wasn't included in or even informed about this celebration was the unspoken weight in our conversation. "I'm so happy for you," I said, pushing aside my hurt. "When can I meet her family? Should we plan a dinner together?" About that." James hesitated. "The Prescotts are very particular about social engagements. Maybe we should wait for the right occasion." The right occasion never seemed to arrive. James and Amelia visited once after the engagement, a brief Sunday afternoon stop that felt more like an obligation than a celebration. Amelia spent most of the visit on her phone, occasionally looking up to offer thin smiles or one-word responses to my questions. "Your pot roast is interesting," she commented during dinner, taking the smallest portion possible. "So rustic." James winced, but said nothing to defend either me or my cooking. As they prepared to leave, I gathered my courage to ask about wedding plans. "Have you set a date yet? I'd love to help with anything you need." "The Prescotts have a wedding planner," James replied quickly. "Everything's being handled professionally." "Still, I'd love to be involved even in small ways. Maybe I could help with favors or—" "Mom," James interrupted, his voice tight. "This is going to be a very sophisticated event. Let the professionals handle it." After they left, I discovered a wedding planning magazine Amelia had been leafing through, left behind on the coffee table. Inside, a folded page featured a vineyard venue in the Hamptons, with a notation about "confirmed for June 15th" in her handwriting. I had my son's wedding date, but no invitation. For weeks, I watched James and Amelia's engagement unfold through glimpses on social media. The professional photo shoot in Central Park, the engagement party at the Prescott estate, Amelia's posts about cake tastings, floral arrangements, and venue visits. Still no formal invitation arrived. As June approached, I finally gathered the courage to call James directly about the wedding. When his face appeared on my phone screen for our video call, he looked stressed, his usual confident expression replaced with tension. "James, honey, I wanted to talk about the wedding plans. It's getting close, and I haven't received any information about the ceremony." He looked away from the camera. "About that, Mom. I've been meaning to talk to you." The hesitation in his voice sent a wave of dread through me. "What is it? Is everything okay with the wedding?" "The wedding's fine, Marseille," he said quickly. "It's just... Mom, I don't think you should come." The words hit like a physical blow. For a moment I couldn't speak. "What do you mean?" I finally managed, my voice barely audible. James sighed, running his hand through his hair in the nervous gesture he'd had since childhood. "Look, Amelia's family has invited a lot of important people. Banking executives, potential clients, family connections that could help my career. It's a certain level of society, and I don't fit into that level." It wasn't a question. "Mom, you're just a cleaning lady," he said, the words spilling out harshly. "It would be embarrassing. You wouldn't know how to act around these people. You'd stick out, and not in a good way." My throat tightened, eyes burning with unshed tears. "I raised you alone for 20 years. I cleaned houses so you could go to Cornell. And I'm grateful for that," he said quickly. "But this is about my future now. Amelia's parents are contributing significantly to our lives. They're buying us a condo in Manhattan as a wedding gift. They're introducing me to people who can advance my career. And they don't want someone like me at their daughter's wedding," I finished for him. "They're very image-conscious," he admitted, "and Amelia agrees it's for the best." I pressed my hand against my mouth, trying to contain the sob building in my chest. "Look, we can have dinner after the honeymoon. Just the three of us," he offered, as though this were a reasonable compromise. "I'll make it up to you." "Make it up to me," I repeated, disbelief cutting through my shock. "James, this is your wedding. I'm your mother. I know, and I'm sorry, but this decision isn't just about you and me anymore. It's about what's best for my relationship with Amelia and her family." After we ended the call, I curled up on the couch and allowed the tears to flow freely. The rejection cut deeper than any hardship I'd faced. I had spent my entire adult life ensuring James would have opportunities, and now those very opportunities had carried him somewhere I wasn't welcome. For days afterward, I moved through my cleaning jobs mechanically, my body going through familiar motions while my mind replayed James's words. "You're just a cleaning lady." It would be embarrassing. The work that had sustained us, that had paid for his education, was now the reason I was excluded from the most important day of his life. I cancelled 2 jobs that week, something I'd never done in 20 years of cleaning. I couldn't face cheerful conversations with clients, couldn't trust myself not to break down while dusting family photos or wedding portraits displayed proudly on their mantels. On the 3rd day, I forced myself back to work at Eleanor Harrington's home, a sprawling colonial where I'd been cleaning for nearly 15 years. Eleanor was different from most clients. A widow in her 70s, she treated me more like a friend than household staff, always insisting I take a tea break with her during my visits. That day, she took one look at my face and sat me down at her kitchen table. "Theresa, what on earth has happened? You look absolutely devastated." The simple kindness broke the dam. Between sobs, I explained about James, the wedding, and his crushing words. Eleanor's expression shifted from concern to indignation. "That's absolutely outrageous. After everything you've done for him, I don't know what to do," I admitted. "Part of me wants to show up anyway, but I don't want to cause a scene or make things worse." "Well, I know exactly what I'd do," Eleanor declared, "but this has to be your decision. What's your heart telling you? That I've lost my son to a world that has no place for people like me?" Eleanor reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "No, dear. You've lost your son temporarily to his own insecurity and poor judgment. The question is whether you'll let him make this mistake without seeing exactly what he's throwing away. Over the following days, word spread through my client network. Eleanor had mentioned the situation to her bridge club, which included several of my other clients. To my surprise, these women I had worked for, whose toilets I had scrubbed and whose laundry I had folded, rallied around me with unexpected support. Patricia Lawson called to tell me her son had done something similar years ago, but had eventually come around. "Stand your ground, Theresa. Your dignity matters." Mary Sullivan offered to lend me a designer dress if I decided to attend. "I have several that would look wonderful with your coloring." Even Richard Kensington, a usually reserved federal judge, whose home I'd cleaned for a decade, called to offer his perspective. "What your son is doing is morally wrong regardless of social pressures. Sometimes young people need to face the consequences of their poor choices directly." I also called my sister Linda in Arizona, who had moved away years ago for her husband's job. We'd never been particularly close, our lives having diverged dramatically, but family was family. "I'll fly in and we'll crash that wedding together," she offered immediately. "Nobody treats my sister like this." No dramatic scenes," I said. "That won't help anything." "Then what will you do? You can't just accept this treatment, Theresa." It was a question I turned over repeatedly in my mind. What should I do? What could I do? I wrote James a letter, pouring out my hurt and disappointment. I described the sacrifices I'd made willingly, the pride I took in his accomplishments, and the pain of being deemed unworthy of sharing in his special day. I mailed it to his apartment, unsure if Amelia might intercept it. His response came via text 3 days later. "I got your letter. I'm sorry you feel that way, but this decision is final. Please respect our wishes." The brevity and coldness of his response crystallized something within me. This wasn't just about a wedding invitation anymore. This was about whether I would accept being erased from my own son's life story because my occupation embarrassed him. The answer came to me while cleaning Eleanor's library. Her daughter Amanda had stopped by with new photos of her own daughter's wedding. As Eleanor proudly showed me the beautiful pictures, I realized with absolute clarity that I deserved to witness my son's wedding, not as an act of defiance, but as an assertion of my rightful place in his life. "Eleanor," I said suddenly, "if I decided to attend anyway, just to observe quietly from the back, would that be terrible?" Eleanor smiled, a spark of mischief in her eyes. "I think it would be exactly right, and I think you should look absolutely stunning when you do it." The morning of James's wedding dawned clear and warm. I had barely slept, alternating between certainty in my decision and anxiety about the potential fallout. I was prepared to be turned away at the door, but I needed to at least try. Eleanor arrived at 9 a.m. as promised, carrying a garment bag and a small cosmetics case. "The cavalry has arrived," she announced cheerfully. "Now let's make you the most elegant mother of the groom they've ever seen." The dress she brought was a simple but exquisite navy blue sheath with a matching jacket, the kind of understated elegance that wouldn't draw attention for being either too fancy or too plain. Mary Sullivan had sent over a pearl necklace and earrings, while Patricia contributed a designer handbag that perfectly matched the shoes Eleanor had included. "I've worn this ensemble exactly once to a charity gala last year," Eleanor explained. "No one from that crowd will be at this wedding, I can assure you." We spent the morning transforming my appearance while preserving my natural dignity. Eleanor's daughter Amanda, who had stopped by to help, styled my hair in a sophisticated updo that softened the lines of my face. "You look beautiful, Theresa," Amanda said, stepping back to admire her work. "Truly elegant." "Remember," Eleanor coached as we prepared to leave, "you're attending as an observer. Sit quietly in the back. Don't make a scene. Your presence alone makes the statement." "What if they ask me to leave?" I worried. "Then you leave with your head held high, but they'll have to physically remove a perfectly dressed, perfectly behaved mother from her only son's wedding. That's a scene they might not want to create." Eleanor drove me to the vineyard venue in her Mercedes, a journey that felt both endless and too quick. As we approached the entrance, lined with white rose arrangements and elegant signage, my courage nearly failed. "I can't do this," I whispered, gripping the car door. What was I thinking? You were thinking that you're James's mother, and no amount of social climbing changes that fact, Eleanor said firmly. Now I'll park and wait. Text me if you need a quick escape. With shaking hands, I made my way toward the ceremony area, a stunning outdoor space overlooking rows of grapevines. Guests in expensive attire were already being seated by ushers in formal wear. I hesitated at the perimeter, scanning for familiar faces that might recognize me. "Excuse me, ma'am, are you here for the bride or groom?" I turned to find a young man in staff attire watching me expectantly. My heart raced as I considered my answer. "The groom," I said softly. "I'm family." The young man looked at me more closely, his eyes widening slightly in recognition. "Wait, are you Mrs. Taylor Theresa?" Startled, I nodded cautiously. "I'm Michael, Evelyn Ramirez's son. You helped my mum get back on her feet after my dad left. You found her cleaning jobs when we couldn't make rent." Relief flooded through me at the friendly face. Evelyn had been a neighbor years ago, and when she'd needed work, I'd connected her with clients who needed additional help. I hadn't seen her or her son in years. "Michael, my goodness, you've grown up so handsome." He glanced around quickly, then lowered his voice. "Mom told me about your situation. She cleans for one of the bridesmaids' families. Look, I can help you find a seat where you won't be immediately noticed. Is that what you want?" Touched by this unexpected alliance, I nodded. "I just want to see my son get married. I won't cause any problems." Michael discreetly guided me to a seat in the back corner, partially obscured by a floral arrangement, but with a clear view of the altar. "The ceremony starts in 15 minutes. If anyone gives you trouble, find me." As I waited, I observed the arriving guests, men in bespoke suits, women in designer dresses and impressive jewelry. Amelia's parents arrived to special treatment, escorted to front-row seats by the wedding planner himself. Her father, a stern-looking man with silver hair, surveyed the gathering like a general reviewing troops. Her mother, thin and immaculately groomed, nodded regally to select guests. The string quartet began playing, signaling the start of the ceremony. The wedding party processed in pairs. I recognized James's college roommate Mark among the groomsmen. Then James himself appeared handsome, in his tuxedo, looking nervous but happy as he took his place at the altar. For a moment I forgot all the hurt and tension, filled only with maternal pride at the sight of my son on his wedding day. I discreetly wiped away tears, grateful for Amanda's waterproof mascara recommendation. The music changed, and guests rose for the bride's entrance. I stood with them, craning slightly to see. In that moment, as everyone's attention focused on the back of the venue, James scanned the crowd. His gaze passed over me, then snapped back in obvious shock as recognition dawned. Even from a distance, I could see the color drain from his face. He leaned toward his best man, whispering urgently. The best man looked in my direction, then back at James with a concerned expression. My heart pounded as I wondered if they would confront me before the ceremony even began. But then something unexpected happened. The wedding planner, a slender man with a Bluetooth earpiece, was approaching me with purpose in his stride. My stomach dropped. This was it. I was about to be escorted out. "Are you Theresa Taylor?" the wedding planner asked in a hushed but urgent tone. I nodded, trying to maintain my composure as nearby guests turned to stare. "Please come with me immediately." "I'm not causing any disturbance," I whispered. "I just want to watch quietly." "That's not the issue," he insisted. "Please, we need to avoid a scene." Dignity intact. I stood and followed him, feeling dozens of curious eyes tracking our exit. Michael, setting up champagne flutes at a side table, caught my eye with a sympathetic glance. I gave him a small smile to show I was all right. The wedding planner led me to a private room in the main building, opened the door, and gestured for me to enter. Inside, James paced back and forth, still in his wedding finery, his face a storm of emotions. "I'll give you a few minutes," the planner said, "but we need to start the ceremony within 10 minutes. The door closed, leaving James and me in tense silence. "What are you doing here?" he finally demanded, his voice tight with anger. "I specifically asked you not to come." I took a deep breath, determined to remain calm. "I'm your mother, James. I have every right to see my only child get married. Rights. This is about respecting our wishes. Amelia and I made our decision clear. No, I corrected gently. You made your decision clear. Did Amelia actually say she didn't want me here, or was that your assumption? He looked away, confirmation enough. James, I raised you alone since you were 4 years old. I cleaned other people's toilets and floors so you could have opportunities I never had. I'm not asking to be seated with the family or included in photos. I just want to witness this important moment in your life. You don't understand what's at stake here, he countered, lowering his voice. Amelia's parents are extremely image-conscious. They're contributing significantly to our future. By contributing, you mean buying your loyalty with money and connections. I said, the hurt making my words sharper than intended. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is being ashamed of your mother because of how she earned an honest living to support you. James ran his hand through his carefully styled hair, disheveling it slightly. Amelia's father specifically said they didn't want working-class elements disrupting the wedding aesthetic. He threatened to withhold the condo if we didn't maintain certain standards. The naked admission stunned me. And you agreed to these terms to erase me from your wedding day because I'm working class. I was trying to secure our future. You always taught me to seize opportunities. I taught you to work hard and treat people with respect, I corrected. I taught you that character matters more than status. What happened to that boy who thanked the cafeteria workers by name and carried groceries for elderly neighbors? I grew up, Mom. I entered the real world where connections and appearances matter. Is that the world you want to live in, where your worth is measured by your address and bank account? Where your own mother isn't good enough to attend your wedding? James opened his mouth to respond, but was interrupted by the door opening. Amelia stood there in her wedding gown, impossibly beautiful, and clearly surprised to see me. What's going on? The planner said there was an issue. Her eyes widened as she recognized me. Mrs. Taylor. I'm sorry for the intrusion, I said, gathering my dignity. I just wanted to see my son get married. I'll leave if that's what you both truly want. James moved protectively toward Amelia. We should discuss this later, Amelia. The guests are waiting. Why is your mother here without an invitation? She asked, confusion evident in her voice. Because I didn't invite her, James admitted reluctantly. Remember our discussion about keeping the guest list exclusive, about your parents' concerns? Amelia looked between us, her expression shifting from confusion to something harder to read. James, can I speak with your mother alone for a moment? He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the idea. Amelia, we don't have time for this. Everyone's waiting. Just 2 minutes, she insisted. Please. With obvious reluctance, James left the room, promising to return quickly. Once the door closed, Amelia turned to me with an unexpected intensity. Did James tell you that I didn't want you at our wedding? Surprised by her directness, I answered honestly. He said you both agreed it was for the best, because I wouldn't fit in with your family's social circle. Her perfectly made-up face registered shock, then something like anger. That's absolutely not true. My parents told me you weren't interested in attending, that you were uncomfortable with formal events. It was my turn to be stunned. What I've been asking about the wedding for months. I never received an invitation. James handled the guest list for his side. Amelia said, her voice growing quieter. He told me he was managing everything with his family. We stared at each other, two women suddenly recognizing the manipulation that had occurred. I would never exclude a mother from her son's wedding, Amelia continued. My own mother is everything to me. James said your parents didn't want working-class elements disrupting the wedding. Amelia's face flushed. My parents can be snobs, it's true, but even they wouldn't go that far. She paused, seeming to make a decision. Mrs. Taylor, tell me honestly, did you clean houses to put James through college? Yes, I said simply, and to put food on our table, to keep him in a safe neighborhood with good schools. I'm not ashamed of the work I've done. Amelia was quiet for a moment, her eyes revealing an internal struggle. Then, surprisingly, she reached out and took my hand. My grandmother was a house cleaner, she said softly, before my grandfather's business took off. My mother doesn't like to talk about it, but my grandmother was proud of how she helped build the foundation for our family's success. She straightened her shoulders. "You should be at this wedding, Mrs. Taylor, in the front row where the mother of the groom belongs." Before I could respond, she opened the door and called for James. When he entered looking anxious, Amelia confronted him directly. "James, did you deliberately exclude your mother from our wedding?" His eyes darted between us. "Amelia, we discussed this. My parents would never ask someone to exclude their mother from their wedding day," she interrupted firmly. "That was your choice, wasn't it?" The silence that followed was answer enough. "I'm disappointed," Amelia said quietly. "This isn't the man I thought I was marrying." James paled. "Amelia, please. It's our wedding day." "Yes, it is. And Mrs. Taylor will be sitting in the front row where she belongs." She turned to me. "I insist, and I apologize for this misunderstanding." James looked ready to argue, but something in Amelia's expression stopped him. Perhaps he recognized he'd pushed too far, or perhaps he saw something in his bride that commanded new respect. "Fine," he conceded. "But my future in-laws, I'll handle my parents," Amelia said with surprising authority. "Now we've kept everyone waiting long enough." The wedding planner, hovering anxiously in the doorway, looked relieved that a decision had been reached. "Mrs. Taylor will be seated in the family section," Amelia informed him. "Please arrange it immediately." James and Amelia returned to their positions, while I was escorted to a seat in the front row opposite Amelia's visibly displeased parents. Mrs. Prescott's tight smile and Mr. Prescott's glare made their feelings clear. But with Amelia's unexpected support, I held my head high. The ceremony proceeded beautifully, though, with an undercurrent of tension. As James and Amelia exchanged vows, I watched my son commit himself to a woman who surprisingly seemed to have more character than he'd recently displayed. The irony wasn't lost on me. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, I applauded with genuine joy, hoping this marriage might help James rediscover the values he'd somehow misplaced in his climb up the social ladder. The reception was held in an elegantly decorated tent overlooking the vineyard. I was seated at a table with distant relatives of James, none of whom seemed to know exactly who I was. I introduced myself simply as Theresa James's mother, offering no explanations about why I wasn't better known to the family. "How lovely that you could make it," one elderly cousin commented. "James is such a fine young man. You must be very proud." "I am," I replied truthfully. Despite everything, I was proud of many aspects of the person James had become, even as I grieved the values he'd left behind. Throughout the reception, Amelia's parents maintained a chilly distance, clearly unhappy with my presence, but unwilling to create a scene. James circulated among guests, stopping briefly at my table with a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Are you comfortable, Mom?" he asked, the formality in his voice painful to hear. "Yes, thank you. It's a beautiful wedding." "Good. We'll talk later." He moved on quickly to more important guests. I considered leaving early, having accomplished my goal of witnessing the ceremony, but something held me there. Perhaps hope that some reconciliation might still be possible, or simply the desire to see this difficult day through to its conclusion. The moment that changed everything came unexpectedly during the toasts. After the best man and maid of honor had spoken, Amelia herself took the microphone. She thanked guests for coming, expressed love for her parents, and then, to my shock, turned her attention to me. "I also want to acknowledge my new mother-in-law, Theresa," she said, raising her glass in my direction, as hundreds of eyes turned to find me. "James is the amazing man I fell in love with because of your sacrifices and your example. Thank you for raising such a wonderful son." The applause that followed was polite but confused, as most guests hadn't been aware of any drama surrounding my attendance. James's face was a complex mixture of emotions as he stood beside his bride, clearly surprised by her public acknowledgement. Amelia's parents maintained frozen smiles, their displeasure evident only in their rigid posture and the tight grip on their champagne glasses. The moment passed quickly as the MC announced the first dance, but something significant had shifted. I decided to leave after the cake cutting, having witnessed the essential elements of the day. As I quietly gathered my purse preparing to text Eleanor for pickup, James approached alone. "You're leaving?" he asked. "I think it's best," I replied. "I've seen what I came to see." He glanced around to ensure we weren't overheard. Mom, I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything right now, James. This is your wedding day. Enjoy it with your bride. We can talk another time. Amelia's pretty upset with me, he admitted, looking younger and more vulnerable than he had in years. She thinks I've been unfair to you. Amelia seems like a woman of character, I observed, perhaps better than either of us realized. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I think she is. After a pause, he added, Can I call you next week when we're back from the honeymoon? I'd like that, I said, allowing myself a small hope that this might be the beginning of healing. Eleanor was waiting as promised when I texted her car idling at the service entrance where I could exit discreetly. Well, she asked as I settled into the passenger seat. How did it go? Better than I expected in some ways, exactly as difficult as I feared in others. I replied finally, allowing the emotions of the day to surface. But I'm glad I came, truly glad. During the drive home, I recounted the day's events, including Amelia's surprising support and James's tentative outreach. Eleanor listened attentively, offering occasional sage comments. Sometimes the people we least expect become our allies, she observed, and sometimes a crisis reveals character in surprising ways. The next morning, I returned to my regular routine cleaning Eleanor's home as scheduled. The familiar tasks were comforting after the emotional upheaval of the wedding. As I polished her silver collection, Eleanor brought me a cup of tea and an envelope. This came for you yesterday, she said. I forgot to give it to you with all the wedding excitement. Inside was a card from James, postmarked before the wedding. The message was brief but significant. Mom, I'm sorry about our last conversation. I've been thinking about what you said. Can we talk after the honeymoon, love, James? It wasn't a full apology or acknowledgement of his behavior, but it was a tiny opening, a possible path back to the relationship we'd once had. The weeks following the wedding were quiet. I knew James and Amelia were honeymooning in Italy, so I didn't expect contact. I focused on my work and began considering changes I'd been contemplating for some time. A month after the wedding, my phone rang with James's number. I answered with a mixture of hope and trepidation. Mom, he began, his voice hesitant. We're back in New York. I owe you an apology. I'm listening, I said, neither accepting nor rejecting before hearing him out. I was wrong about everything. The way I treated you, the things I said. He paused, and I could hear him gathering himself. Amelia helped me see how terrible my behavior was. She's pretty disappointed in me, actually. I like her more and more, I commented, allowing a small smile. Yeah, she's better than I deserve right now. He took an audible breath. Mom, I'm ashamed of myself. I got so caught up in impressing Amelia's family, in being accepted into their world, that I betrayed the person who made everything possible for me. There's no excuse for that. His words were what I'd hoped to hear, but I needed more than words. What happens now, James? Could we maybe have dinner? The three of us, Amelia really wants to get to know you properly. It was a start. I'd like that. The dinner was arranged for the following weekend when they would drive up from the city. I suggested my apartment rather than a restaurant, wanting privacy for what might be a difficult conversation. To my surprise, they readily agreed. When they arrived, Amelia immediately hugged me, a genuine warmth in her greeting that I hadn't expected. James was more hesitant, our relationship still fragile with hurt. Throughout dinner, I learned more about Amelia than I had in all previous interactions combined. She was thoughtful, intelligent, and seemingly genuine in her desire to build a relationship with me. James remained somewhat quiet, watching our interaction with what looked like relief. Mrs. Taylor, Amelia said as we finished dessert, I want you to know I'm truly sorry about the wedding situation. I had no idea what was happening. Please call me Theresa, I replied, and I believe you. James and I need to work through some things, but I don't hold you responsible. Actually, James interjected, there's something else we wanted to tell you. He glanced at Amelia, who nodded encouragingly. Amelia's pregnant. We just found out last week. You're going to be a grandmother. The news hit me with unexpected force. a grandchild. Despite everything, life was moving forward, offering new beginnings. That's wonderful, I said, meaning it completely. Congratulations to you both. We want our child to know their grandmother, Amelia said firmly. To know where they come from and the values that should matter. I caught a flicker of something in James's expression, perhaps recognition of the pointed comment, perhaps genuine agreement. Over the following months, our relationship slowly rebuilt on new foundations. James and I had several difficult but necessary conversations about his behavior and the deeper insecurities that had driven it. Amelia proved to be an unexpected ally in this healing process, often mediating when emotions ran high. The news of my impending grandchild sparked a period of reflection about my own future. At 58, I still had energy and dreams I'd long set aside. With James no longer dependent on me, perhaps it was time to consider changes. I approached Eleanor with a business proposition that had been forming in my mind for years. I want to start my own cleaning service. Not just me working alone, but a proper company that treats domestic workers with dignity and pays living wages. Eleanor's eyes lit up. That's a brilliant idea, Theresa. You have the experience, the client relationships, and the work ethic. What I don't have is business knowledge or startup capital, I admitted. Well, Eleanor said with a smile, I happen to have both, along with several friends who might be interested in investing in a women-owned business with strong ethics. Within 6 months, Dignity Cleaning Services was established with a business model that emphasized fair treatment of workers and high-quality service. Many of my long-term clients became our first customers, and Eleanor's connections opened doors to corporate accounts that expanded our reach. I gradually reduced my own cleaning work to focus on running the company, training new employees, many of whom were women in situations similar to mine, years ago, single mothers, immigrants, those needing flexible work with dignity. When Amelia gave birth to my granddaughter Julia, I drove to New York to meet her, staying in their guest room for a week to help the new parents adjust. The apartment, a wedding gift from the Prescotts, as promised, was luxurious beyond anything I'd experienced, but I found myself comfortable there, no longer intimidated by the trappings of wealth. One evening, while Amelia rested and I held the sleeping newborn, James sat beside me, watching his daughter with wonder. I'm sorry I almost deprived her of knowing you, he said quietly. I can't believe I nearly made that mistake. But you didn't in the end, I reassured him. That's what matters now. No thanks to me, he acknowledged. If you hadn't shown up at the wedding, if Amelia hadn't been the person she is, I might have lost you forever. Well, you're stuck with me now, I said lightly, especially since this little one needs her grandma. James reached over to squeeze my hand. She needs to know where she comes from. The good parts of who I am came from you, from watching you work with dignity and determination, no matter what life threw at us. I lost sight of that for a while, but I won't forget again. The healing wasn't instantaneous or complete. There were still moments of tension, especially when the Prescotts were involved. They eventually accepted my presence in their daughter's life, though with reserved cordiality rather than warmth. But Amelia maintained firm boundaries about my role as grandmother, insisting I be included in family events, regardless of her parents' discomfort. My business flourished eventually, expanding to 3 neighboring counties. I found unexpected fulfillment in creating opportunities for women who, like me, needed work that respected their humanity while accommodating their family responsibilities. The journey from that painful phone call, "You're just a cleaning lady," to where I stand today taught me that dignity isn't conferred by occupation, wealth, or social standing. It comes from within, from knowing your own worth and refusing to accept others' limited perceptions of you. I've learned that sometimes you have to show up uninvited to claim your rightful place, that courage often precedes acceptance, and that standing up for yourself doesn't always mean confrontation. Sometimes it simply means being present, refusing to be erased. Have you ever had to stand up for your dignity when someone underestimated you because of your job or background? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need encouragement to claim their place at the table. Remember, your worth isn't determined by what you do, but by who you are and how you treat others. Thank you for listening, and may you always find the courage to show up for yourself, even when others try to make you invisible.